Good evening, Dolphins fans. Welcome to another episode of On the FinSide here with Kat and Paul. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Spreaker, iTunes, YouTube, iHeartRadio, and on Spotify. I'm Brian Cat NFL. Paul is fanatic_pick. The Dolphins get back into the win column here today with a 20-3 win over the New York Jets, completing the season sweep. A dominant defensive performance where the Dolphins in two games allow 3 total points to the New York Jets. Incredible defensive performance in both contests here. Not a very impressive victory. I mean, let's be honest. It was a grinded out type of game. It was 13-3 for, the better part of 2 quarters here, Paul. But we're not looking for style points here at this point of the season. The Dolphins are now 6th seed in the AFC, and if the season ended today, they would be in the playoffs.
Well, not according to Chris Sims, but, we'll let that slide because, Chris Sims made that huge analogy for the rest of the national media today with his little bony flub up with the Pats game call. But before I jump into that, I do want to say great job to the Dolphins NYC crew today. They raised over $3,000 for charity with their virtual MetLife takeover, which is a huge, huge thing. So great job, Igor, Michelle, and the rest of the Dolphins NYC crew. But yeah, no, Miami looked overall really good today. I thought one thing in this game, and I know we're going to dive into this and break it down further. I didn't feel that Fitzpatrick was Fitzmagic today. I don't think he had a chance to come out and really put on a show against a lackluster defense, and maybe make some form of quarterback controversy, at least as far as the media is concerned. I don't feel he did enough for that today. I think we got our answer where I don't think he was much better than Tua in this one. And given the fact that Tua is an ascending player and Fitzpatrick's the wily gunslinger vet, like we've talked about for years with the quarterback situation, things even being on an equal playing field overall, you've got to give it to the young ascending player.
So, Paul? Do you think that if Tua had started the game today, the Dolphins would have won?
Yeah, completely.
I do too. I don't know how much, or if it would have been a 10-3 game, a 6-3 game, a 30-3 game, but I think so too. And it speaks more to the quality of opponent we were facing here with the Jets. But it didn't seem like that in the beginning. I mean, the first drive of the game, we were thinking, what the heck's going on here? I mean, Sam Darnold starts out 4 for 4 for 56 yards and completes a long pass to Brashad Perryman against Byron Jones. And it looked like, okay, this day may not go like we think it's going to go. But then from that point, the Dolphins defense really kicked into high gear. After that, going 3 for 3 for 56 yards, Sam Darnold finishes the game 13 for 24, 141 yards, and 2 touchdowns after starting 3 for 3 for 56 yards. So, I say it week after week, and we talk about it week after week. Having Xavien Howard and Byron Jones on opposite ends of the football at the cornerback position makes a world of difference.
It does, and I say it week in and week out. It's not just that fact. I mean, Byron Jones, whether he's got interceptions or not, has to be playing out of his mind for folks to continue to try to exploit Xavier Howard. It feels like week in and week out, people are throwing at Howard more and more often, which is hilarious. And it really it's a testament to Byron. But the other aspect I'd say as well is our safeties are doing such a good job, and Nick Needham has really stepped it up of late. And you look at the job that Bobby, Eric, and Nick are doing, it really goes unheralded because of the fact that Byron and Xavier are so lights out on the boundary. But you can't discount that fact because end of the day, they're 2 guys, and if they're sending 5 guys out in patterns, you need the rest of the defense and those safeties. I mean, Bobby at one point, I think at like the halfway mark to where we're at now, was allowing a 0.0 passer rating in his area. And
Yeah.
that's for somebody that gets as many snaps as anybody on the field.
Yeah. And Xavier Howard, uh, PFF has been one of his biggest critics, and they've given him a top 10 grade this year, and he's had under 50% completed against him, and he's covering receivers alone on an island man to man throughout the entire game. 7th interception this year, and he has more interceptions over the last 3 years than any defensive back in professional football, and he missed a year and a half of those 3 years. I don't know if I'm not sure exactly how many games he missed, but I think it was 17, 18 games he missed. I mean, he's doing a phenomenal job. I mean, Byron Jones got beat for a 37-yarder from Brashad Perryman, but other than that, he locked down his side of the field too. And yeah, I can't say enough about Nick Needham in the nickel spot. I mean, Jamison Crowder is the Jets' best receiver on a down-to-down basis, and he didn't do anything today.
Yeah, and you know, I have to say it's really collectively it's God. I know we're talking about that long completion, but end of the day, those plays are going to happen no matter how good your secondary is, no matter how good your defense is. There's no defense in the history of the NFL, no matter how good, even the Ravens defenses or the vaunted Steel Curtain or the no-name defense or the Killer Bees, any of those defenses, believe it or not, they still allowed points and they still allowed a handful of plays here and there.
Yeah.
It's football. You cannot completely shut anybody down on a every single play basis. It's just not going to happen. We're going to allow some plays, and sometimes, believe it or not, it's the defense dictating what type of plays they're going to allow. An example of that would be just before halftime, the defense started playing soft to not allow the deep pass, and yeah, Frank Gore ripped off 2 long runs that added to his total today. That guess what? Still wasn't 100 yards. So, you know, and without those 2 runs, he didn't do squat. So
Yep.
it's you gotta look at it with a grain of salt on that.
Imagine running your offense through Frank Gore this week and having the Chargers run their offense through Kalen Ballage a few weeks ago. I mean, that's quite shocking to say. And again, the Dolphins relied on them heavily, at certain points over the last few years, but to actually scheme to say, okay, we're going to go with Frank Gore here. We're going to go with Kalen Ballage here, like the Chargers and the Jets did. Astounding.
Now, hold on. Before you move on from that point, though, Kat, I'm going to make a different point because this is something I thought about in that Kalen Ballage love fest a few weeks ago. It's in all honesty, I think it's more a testament to Josh Boyer that these teams have run their offense through Kalen Ballage and Frank Gore. Josh Boyer had the San Diego Chargers or LA Chargers or the wherever the hell Chargers so confused that the only thing they could do, even with a deficit, was run the ball with Kalen Ballage because they were afraid to throw. Miami's defense today, they were shutting down the wide receivers for the most part and dictating, look, go ahead, run at us with Frank Gore. You might get some yardage, but you're not going to beat us doing it that way. And I honestly think a lot of it is Miami dictating what the opponent does because they know that it's something that won't beat them, even if it allows them to get some yardage. I really, truly do.
Yeah, and when you look at the last 2 weeks now, Frank Gore, Melvin Gordon, and Philip Lindsay have run for a lot of yards. And look, Gordon and Lindsay last week, what they, them running for 166 yards between them had a lot to do with them winning that football game. But, still over the last 2 games, the Jets and Broncos have scored 23 points against the Dolphins. 23 total points, and you see how many yards they ran for. So I'm fine with this bend but don't break defensive philosophy because on the back end, the Dolphins can actually make plays and prevent touchdowns. And it's not just like they're letting other teams, drive down, to the 5 or 10 yard line every time. They're preventing points in general. I mean, 23 points over the last 2 games. If there were any offensive output last game against the Broncos, the Dolphins would have won that one too.
Well, and on top of that too, it's we talk about the run defense a little bit, and we saw another example of it today. It's Miami when it comes to those short yardage, run heavy downs on third or fourth down. Overall, I mean, other than the occasional quarterback sneak, which with the right quarterback works almost every time when you've only got a foot to go. But overall, Miami has stuffed a hell of a lot of 3rd and 1s, 4th and 1s for a team that's supposedly so bad at stopping the running game. And
Yeah.
that alone tells me it's what I was saying before, where they are dictating what the opposing offense will do with the looks that they're giving.
If there is a linebacker that is better on 3rd or 4th and 1 than a Landon Roberts, I'd like to see him. I mean, he is always, always, always in the backfield. I'm not saying that he's an elite linebacker or anything close to that, but man, on 3rd and 4th and 1, he gets in the backfield so quickly, and Zach Sealer, Raekwon Davis stack up the run so effectively on those short yardage types of situations. So, but it wasn't all good today because at the running back spot.
Kat, I got to ask you this real quick because we got it in the chat, and I don't want to lose it because we've got a lot going on in the chat. Phil's asking, Sewell's got to be the guy in the draft for Miami with the Texans pick, obviously, not ours. I've got an answer there, but I'm going to let you go first and see if you cover what I'm going to say.
Yeah, Penny Sewell is an elite player. I don't see him being available anywhere close to where the Dolphins are picking with the Texans pick. I mean, I as of right now, the Dolphins are picking 11th or 12th with that Texans pick. I don't think that's going to happen. I think he is a easy pick for the Bengals to pair with Jonah Williams at the tackle spot. But I like the possibility of drafting an offensive tackle and giving them options with pushing Robert Hunt possibly to the inside to compete at the guard spot. 2 names to keep an eye on are Christian Darrisaw from Virginia Tech and Rashawn Slater, the offensive tackle from Northwestern. Those are 2 guys that I'm going to do a lot more work on here over the next month. But they're starting from everywhere from Kuiper to Todd McShay to Dane Brugler are starting to get a lot more buzz. So those might be the names we start to focus on here if the Dolphins are going to have 2 picks between, 10 and 25.
So, Kat, what I'm going to say to that is I agree with you completely. It's Miami is completely out of Penei Sewell, short of him smoking through a gas mask range at this point in time. The Texans look like they're going to win a couple more games probably. And it is what it is. I mean, it's still worth it to have the top 2 first-round picks, and because we don't need a quarterback, I'm not freaking out about the fact that it's going to be a little later than I was hoping. But one point I was thinking about today is when Solomon Kinley comes back, at least as it stands right now, I think Miami's best offensive line, and I didn't see anything to lead me away from this today, is probably Jesse Davis at left tackle, Eric Flowers at guard, Karras at center, Kinley at right guard, and Hunt at right tackle. And I'm kind of starting to feel like Miami got 2 guys in the first round that may have a tremendous upside, but are a little further away from it, like you and I initially thought with Austin Jackson, than it looked like the first couple of games. I'm getting a little worried about Jackson at that left tackle spot.
I thought he had a better game today. Same thing that we talked about in the pre-draft is that he misses a lot of blocks. I mean, he could look really good for the entire game, but completely whiff on 3 or 4 blocks. It was the same tape at USC. But I thought he was better today. But then again, the Jets don't have a lot of edge rushers either. But I don't have a lot of bad things to say about Austin Jackson. And I'll tell you this: if they ever put Austin Jackson on the bench, I would be 100 times more angry, because the top 4 offensive tackles from that draft that I wanted to trade up for, which were Mekhi Becton, Tristan Wirfs, Andrew Thomas, Jedrick Wills. I wanted to trade up for one of those guys. They didn't. So now you've got Austin Jackson and Noah Igbenogany. So you have to trust the process with it because they were 20 when you drafted them. I didn't expect them to be great right away anyway.
No, I'm with you, and I just it's if Austin Jackson continues to have those handful of plays a game. There was one play today where someone blitzed inside of him. There was no one head up or outside, and he literally just touched no one. He didn't even try to. He didn't even it didn't even whip the head around and have that oh crap moment of realization. That worries me.
I also saw a lot of good plays from him today. I thought he sealed the edge a lot better on pass protection than in previous weeks from what I've seen before. But I'll see a lot more in the all-22 in the upcoming weeks. But he's somebody who's 6'5", 320 pounds. He's only 21 years old. So hopefully when he's 23, we have a finished product. But we've got to keep him in the lineup as far as I'm concerned to see if we've got that, especially when he's not protecting presumably to his blind side. So we'll see what happens when we go along here. But one thing also too, Paul, today at the running back spot, a common theme that started to take place was Deandre Washington, 14 carries for or 13 carries for 49 yards, almost 4 yards a carry. And it was clear that when he got on the field, he was the most competent running back from a down-to-down basis. He's built thick, ran a 4.49 coming out of Texas Tech. And more importantly, he didn't put the ball in the ground for 2 consecutive drives when the Dolphins were up 10 points. I mean, that almost cost the Dolphins the game. Dolphins were up 13-3 in the third quarter. And Matt Breida puts the ball on the ground, and then the next drive, Patrick Laird, on his only carry of the game, also puts the ball on the ground. Deandre Washington comes in the game, gets a little bit more stabilized. So I'm looking forward to seeing a little bit more of Washington here this upcoming week.
I am too, and I really, really like, and I never thought I'd be saying this at this point in the year, even though I know I liked Xavien Howard when they signed him as an undrafted. And I was like, ooh, when they traded for DeAndre Washington. I didn't expect them to be our 2 most explosive guys. Now, I will say, I thought, other than that fumble, Breida played a little bit better than anything we've seen from him all year. But DeAndre Washington and Xavien Howard have looked explosive at times, which does lead me to think that if Miami can get a little bit bigger back in the draft coming up, like a Najee Harris, Ramondre Stevens, Chuba Hubbard, somebody, they could really be some good complementary pieces, and they probably push Laird off the roster, which is fine. Great as a free agent. So DeAndre Washington, Xavien Howard, Myles Gaskin, and at least one rookie with a little bit of power to him. And suddenly you've got a much better backfield for 2021.
And Patrick Laird is somebody that my biggest compliment has always been that he doesn't make mistakes. He had 1 carry today and he fumbled in the third quarter. It's not going to work. So I'm not going to shed a tear if he's not on the roster next year. And I'm glad you said Najee Harris because, I'm not a fan of drafting running backs in the first round. You know this. 11 carries for 96 yards this past week. But the bigger thing with him is he played with Tua at Alabama. And I think the Dolphins could stand to get a running back that absorbs a lot of that attention and a lot of those hits over the upcoming years. And Najee Harris at 6'2", 230 pounds, I think could be that guy. So we'll see as the draft approaches. We're already talking about the draft now, 5-6 months away.
Dude, I've done a couple mocks already, so I can't,
I hate those mocks. God.
I know you do. That's why I send them to you.
I do 1 mock a year. And I can barely do that. I can't stand mock drafts. But anyway, mock drafts are a good way to get the mind racing, get the blood pumping. I do those internally. I just don't share them with people. I appreciate you sharing them with me, though.
Oh.
Anyway. All right. Moving on. Devonta Parker, 9 catches for 118 yards today. Mike Gesicki, only 2 catches for 35 yards, but still, when you take a look at it, 2 big catches. One was a 22-yarder that put the Dolphins into field goal range to tie the game at 3-3. And then Mike Gesicki also catches let's see, doing the math, 13-yard touchdown to put the Dolphins up 10-3. So it seems like when Devonta Parker and Mike Gesicki perform, it's because Ryan Fitzpatrick's at quarterback.
It is, and a lot of that's. I mean, to be fair, Devontae looked good with Tua a couple weeks ago, but really, it's you've got a quarterback that just his whole passing game is chuck it up, see what happens, and you've got two big jump ball specialists that like chuck it up and see what happens. So, yeah, that's why he completes a lot of balls. That's why he gets a lot of interceptions. It's why he's both Fitzmagic and Fitztragic. So yeah, and to be fair, Devontae had 8 catches for 105. Thank you, referee crew, for that one gift of a reception fumble that he never had control of. What's that?
It counted.
It counted, but I'm letting it be known that in the holiday spirit, the referees gave us an early Christmas present today.
Yeah, it was. It should not have been. I mean, I like the grandma comparison. That if you show this to your grandma and say, did he catch it or did he not catch it? She would probably say no, he did not catch the pass. But there was not enough to overturn it. So hey. Awesome. So 9 catches for 118 yards officially there for Devonta Parker, but he was his relationship with Ryan Fitzpatrick is why they were able to move the chains throughout the entire game. And that's the thing with Tua is that it's not that Devonta Parker's a worse wide receiver or Gesicki's a worse tight end. It's that they don't have a training camp together. They don't have a relationship together yet that Ryan Fitzpatrick has with Parker and with Gesicki.
Yeah, and to be fair though, too, Fitzpatrick doesn't really have the relationship with a Jakeem Grant or a number of other guys that I think Tua seems to be developing. I'm really getting frustrated because I've seen overall a lot of improvement from Grant this year, but I haven't seen him get the opportunities even when it's there, especially when Ryan Fitzpatrick's on the field. And if you're a jump ball specialist, I got news for you, Ryan Fitzpatrick. Jakeem Grant can jump out of a building like a flea. You can throw jump balls to Jakeem Grant, and he's going to either get a pass interference call, make the catch, or maybe make a drop. But it's you've got your chances like you do with the taller guys. It just doesn't look like it because he's short.
Well, he's 5 foot. What, 5'4"? No, he's 5'8". He's 5'8"
in heels.
He did draw a pass interference today. Yeah, he can jump out of the building, but he's 5'8".
Mm-hmm.
Like, who cares? I mean, like I think Jakeem Grant is an explosive player. He's a phenomenal kick returner. He's a phenomenal punt returner. He should get more end arounds. It's embarrassing that Chan Gailey does not give him more end arounds. I like him more as a 4th or a 5th receiver, not somebody who's a number 2 guy. But he had 2 catches, 15 yards a day. He had a punt return that, and what I like about him most is that, knock on wood, he's not dropping punts anymore, which he did a couple of years ago. In fact, I'd be surprised if he didn't make the Pro Bowl as a punt return this year.
If there's no Dolphins leading the way in the Pro Bowl voting. So let's just call a spade there. I mean, Xavien Howard's playing best corner in football. You've got Raekwon Davis, who was the number 1 ranked defensive player in the NFL 2 weeks in a row. You've got Emmanuel Ogbah, who has forced enough sacks for touchdowns or damn near touchdowns this year. And you've got Jakeem Grant. You've got the Colonel, who should be on that list. And up until today, Matt Hawk deserved consideration.
Yeah, well, it's because at this point it's fan voting, and most fans are idiots. Not anybody on this chat.
Not our listeners.
Not our listeners. No, they're very intelligent comments all the time here on the in the chat and on this thread.
Like,
but
Grant is an athletic midget. I just saw that.
I mean, and the thing is, like, what I don't understand is when people say, "Hey." Like even MiamiDolphins.com puts out, hey, vote for this guy for the Pro Bowl. Like, okay, I'll vote for him if he deserves it, not because he's a Dolphin. That's stupid.
Chandler Cox, baby.
Yeah, Chandler Cox as a fullback, he's inactive for most weeks, but he was inactive today too. But anyway,
I want to vote Wilkins for fullback or Kinley.
The
Put
Pro
Kinley
Bowl,
at fullback.
The Pro Bowl sucks. So, moving on to some other positions here, I think we're going to get to a lot of them here in our grades. So let's start with the quarterback spot. Ryan Fitzpatrick goes 24 for 39 today, 257 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. I thought this resembled a mini version of the Jaguars game, the first game that the Dolphins won this year when they won 31-13, where the game started to slow down more and more and more, and Fitzpatrick was a caretaker in the third quarter. What I respect here is that, of his 24 completions, they went to 10 different receivers here. He had a great relationship with Devonta Parker. He had 2 big plays to Mike Gesicki. So I'm going to go with a B+ for Fitzy here.
I'm going to go with a B, and it's funny you use the Jags comparison because I was thinking about it today. And, watching a little bit of Mike Glennon, watching Gardner Minshew at times, watching, I'm blanking on the name right now. Really, Ryan Fitzpatrick reminds me a little bit of each of those guys. But here's the difference. Ryan Fitzpatrick is playing with a team that has a defense and a special teams that are putting the Dolphins in advantageous territory. And yeah, he's doing okay. He's going to make some special plays at times. It's cool. He's fun. He'll provide a spark. But at the end of the day, there's nothing that was special about today's performance. It wasn't his best of the year. It wasn't his worst of the year. Little Fitz magic. Not as much Fitz tragic today, but it's the Jets. So
yeah,
it's a B for me.
Yeah, and let me be clear. I want Tua to start the minute the finger gets healthy.
And period. Flores has said this is Tua's job. There's nothing that's going to unseat him this year as far as that goes.
And it's great that Fitzpatrick can come off the bench here and play the way he did today. I mean, yeah, I know the Jets secondary is terrible. They started 2 rookies, Bryce Hall, Lamar Jackson at the cornerback spots, quarterback rating of 105.5 before this game with a 72% completion percentage. But still, he's got to perform, and he's got to perform with a lead too, without a running game and without a great offensive line ahead of him too. So at the running back spot, Paul, I'm going to throw it to you on that one.
Oh, this is such a pukey position to grade today with all the goofiness.
That's why I threw it to you first.
I hate you, just so you know. I take back the hard hands I gave you earlier. I thought Breida looked okay at times. There were moments where it looked like he was one cut away from taking it to the house. But the back-to-back fumbles really dragged us down. Although there was a spark in Deandre Washington. Jesus Christ. We use too many goddamn running backs. I feel like I'm grading 20 different papers together. And I'm going to go with a C+. I think there was a lot that got left on the field, and the running backs really were the group that almost cost the game today at times. And I know that sounds weird in such a big win, but against other teams, that could have been devastating. To cough up those fumbles there is unacceptable. I'm actually going to drop that to a C- here. Yeah.
I'm with you. Or close on that. I'm going to go with a D. And really, the fumbles by Patrick Laird and Matt Breida in the third quarter drag that grade down considerably. Deandre Washington, I thought, was a bright spot here, and I think that he looks the part more so than Matt Breida and Patrick Laird at this point. And if Matt Breida doesn't improve, he's going to be Matt Breida, the Walmart Greeda.
Yeah, but he's going to be the fastest sticker hander outer ever.
Yes, he will. Yes, he will. He is fast, and he does have some skills. And I'm not going to dock him just for one fumble, but I want to see more out of him in the upcoming weeks. And the Dolphins are going to get Myles Gaskin back, if not next week, then the week after. And I'm looking forward to seeing Myles Gaskin here back in a Dolphins uniform. I can't believe I'm actually saying that.
I told you when they drafted him.
I know you did. That's why I hate it.
I know.
At wide receiver and tight end, Devonta Parker, 8 catches for 119 yards, takes advantage of Lamar Jackson and Bryce Hall at the cornerback spots for the majority of the day. Mike Gesicki, also 2 big plays on the day. Adam Shaheen with another touchdown catch, his third on the year. That put the Dolphins up 20-3. Durham Smythe also with a very good blocking effort, caught 3 passes for 19 yards. But what I'm looking, Paul, to see is for one of these wide receivers to not only step up, but for Chan Gailey to use them, because there's a lot of talent and they were active today. Malcolm Perry was active. Lynn Bowden was active. And Antonio Callaway was active. Somebody's got to step up here at the wide receiver position, and Gailey has to use them. So overall, I'm going to go with a B+ for the Dolphins, largely because of Devonta Parker.
Yeah, this is another one of those weird positions for me, because despite the fact that I think Miami has some mismatched weapons that, if used appropriately, could be a hell of a lot of fun. Chan Gailey seems just super inclined, and it's funny because a lot of people, when they first pulled Chan Gailey out of the retirement home, they thought he wouldn't really use the tight ends other than occasionally splitting Gesicki out. And we see a lot of plays now where we've got 3 of the tight ends on the field. So I need to break this up into segments. Devonta Parker, hell of a game today. Good job. Tight end. I think we're starting to near that territory where, for one, I want to see Miami grab a tight end fairly early next year. For 2, Mike Gesicki, good job getting in the end zone today. You are no longer a tight end. You are a slot receiver. Durham Smythe, Adam Shaheen, depending on the package, love to see you start at tight end. I'm over Gesicki being anything other than a soft mismatch weapon receiver. Let's just use him like he is. He is what he is. Let's use him like that. Start spreading the ball around a little bit more. Don't just throw a token pass. You've got guys like Antonio Callaway, who on any catch can take it to the house. Guys like Jakeem Grant, who on any catch can take it to the house. Mac Hollins, who, let's face it, he's not a huge threat to take it to the house, but he's a decent receiver that can muscle his way through some people. And if you start opening that up, you're going to open up the running game. If they really only have to worry about, for the most part, 1 or 2 receivers because you're not going to throw it other people's way, that doesn't open up the running game because everybody else can keep their damn eyes in the backfield. So
I'm a little confused on what you said with Gesicki, because Gesicki had 2 of the most important catches of the game.
He
did. These were not like dump off passes where Gesicki rumbled for 20 yards. I mean, he caught a 22-yard pass where there are very few tight ends in the NFL that can make that catch.
Oh, completely.
And there's that touchdown that put the Dolphins up 10-3. Very few players can also make that catch. So, but I do agree with you where basically he's a wide receiver. He's a slot guy. He's not a tight end.
No,
He's not somebody who puts his hand on the ground and blocks and doubles down on anything but that. So I agree on the chess piece, but what I will say is that he's a pretty damn good chess piece.
he is if fully used appropriately, and that's where I'd almost like to see him on the field less, but used better, if that makes any kind of sense for you here. And use him like you did today at times, but really fully embrace that role with him, because he's not going to be a blocker. He's not going to be physical. He's just going to jump up and use his tremendous wingspan to try to grab things. And that's okay. There is a role for that. There is a role for that, and it's a similar one to Jakeem Grant, how Grant should be used at times. Other than I don't want to see Gesicki run an end around.
At the tight end spot, I swear.
B plus for me, by the way. As much crap as I just talked.
No. I think your points are well received. I swear, if they draft a tight end, I'm going to be so pissed.
The only thing Gesicki can block is me on Twitter.
I mean, if they draft a developmental fourth tight end, I'm gonna fly to Connecticut and punch you in the face.
Oh, I'm not saying developmental. I'm talking like a Kyle Pitts.
No, okay, then you're gonna have to draft him probably in the top 15 picks. You willing to do that?
Maybe.
Okay, and hey, he's a heck of a talent. And we'll continue to delve into that as we move forward to the draft, because he had a phenomenal game with 3 touchdowns for Florida here over the past week against Kentucky. Offensive line, I thought they had a fantastic bounce back week. I don't think they did great as a unit. I don't think they opened up a lot of holes. But if there's one thing the Jets are good at on defense, it is defending the run. And they created a lot of problems inside. Quinnen Williams continues to be a better player for the Jets, one of their better star players, but not at a very big need position. But on the edges, yeah, Austin Jackson had some bad reps, like we talked about. Robert Hunt at the right tackle started the game with a false start, but I thought he rebounded pretty nicely too. So overall, I'm going to go with the B- for the offensive line.
I'm going to go with a B-. Karras and Austin Jackson felt like the weak links today. Yeah, they started with a false start with Hunt, but I thought he played a good game. I thought Jesse Davis was good today. Eric Flowers was just fine. I thought they opened up some lanes, some lanes that didn't get used at times in the running game. And overall, I only put 2 of the sacks fully on the offensive line. There was one sack where there was still a pocket, and Fitzpatrick just put his head down, ducked down, and waited to get hit. There was another one where I felt Fitzpatrick just held the ball too long. And yeah, so I'm going to go with a B- as well, but I thought that they were just fine today. And really, I can't wait to get Kinley back, because I think he is a welcome addition along that line. And I'm starting to see where, as okay-ish as Karras is, I want a little bit of a change in center if the right opportunity presents itself.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, Kinley brings a lot of nastiness along the offensive line, and Paul is the better person to ask about offensive line play, because when I'm watching the ball during the game, before I get into the all-22, Paul is actually watching the offensive linemen during the week.
I love me some fat dudes
when the Dolphins are playing. So I almost deflect to him for these grades here. At defensive line, sticking on that same concept here, Christian Wilkins getting back into the lineup. And I've never thought Christian Wilkins is a great player, but getting him back, teaming with Zach Sealer and Raekwon Davis on the inside, gives the Dolphins a heck of a 3-man tandem back there. And yeah, I know they gave up some runs to Frank Gore, but I don't really put it on them for that. So, but I like that it's a little bit beefier on the inside. Emmanuel Ogbah, I predicted that he would get 2 sacks against Connor McDermott. He didn't, but I thought that Sam Darnold was looking at him all game, coming off the edge. Shaq Lawson, he did okay against Mekhi Becton, but I thought Becton is a pretty tough guy to go against as well at the left tackle position for the Jets. So, overall, when it comes to the Dolphins defensive line, I'm going to go with a B.
I'm going to go with a B plus. I know they didn't put up huge sack numbers in this one, and other than a couple of garbage runs, they pretty well kept Frank Gore as Frank Gore or less, which is if Gore's at 4 yards a carry consistently, well, he's being Frank Gore. If he's under that, well, you held him okay. And he had a couple of long runs that contributed to it during a prevent-ish defense leading up to the half. But really, I am excited, and I thought that they hit Darnold a lot more than the sacks will tell you in this game. That includes Van Ginkel at times. And I really like this defensive tackle rotation for the future. I'm glad they locked Sealer up. Wilkins definitely brought a new energy back to this defense, and he still is jumpy self. So welcome back, Christian.
Yeah, absolutely. At linebacker, the Dolphins needed a bounce back game after Melvin Gordon and Philip Lindsay ran for 166 yards against them in the Dolphins' 20-13 loss this past Sunday. I'm going to throw it to you there on the linebacker spot.
I thought Baker played decently today. He got a half sack and really, I think he's a valuable cog in the run defense that can blitz occasionally. His pass coverage isn't as good as his speed indicates it should be. Landon Roberts was heading towards my Coke Bus player of the game at one point because he seemed to be that guy that missiles in and doesn't get himself under control fast enough. But he made up for it on a critical 4th-and-1 stop where he just rocked Gore about 2 yards deep in the backfield and brought him down. Van Noy was Van Noy. He is all over the field doing a lot of unheralded, unmentionable things that don't show up in a stat sheet. But again, he contributed with a half sack today. I can very easily give these guys a B plus as well. I thought they played very well, and I don't think it mattered who the opponent was in this one.
Yeah, I'm going to go with a B for them. I thought Landon Roberts was gashed a few times. I thought Jerome Baker was, especially on a 17-yard run from Frank Gore at the end of the second quarter. Andrew Van Ginkel was a little bit quiet if we're counting him as a linebacker instead of an edge player along the defensive line. Van Noy, I love Kyle Van Noy, and I thought he looked a lot better in this game, and it made a huge difference in the defense in general because that hip looked a lot better. He wasn't questionable throughout the entire week, so I'm going to go with a B. At defensive back, this is a pretty easy grade for me. It's an A plus. Xavien Howard was phenomenal today. Getting his 7th interception of the year, but also he should have probably had 2 more. Locking down his side of the field the way that he did was phenomenal. At the other cornerback spot, Byron Jones also had a solid day. Allowed a 37-yard pass to Brashad Perryman early in the game, but then responded very, very well. Safeties, Bobby McCain and Eric Rowe were fantastic. And Nick Needham and Brandon Jones continue to be bigger factors on defense from week to week. So the Dolphins can roll 6 deep at defensive back. Noah Igbenogany not on the field, but let's also keep in mind Noah Igbenogany turned just 21 years old this past Friday. So he's got a lot of learning to do here. And we haven't seen him on the field either. So overall, A plus for this defense, going up against Sam Darnold, where, he has a quarterback rating of 50, 60. So,
not good. Pretty good for the Jets. It's
Flacco would have done better, but yeah, I agree.
I'm going to go with an A here, and for a lot of the reasons you mentioned. Brandon Jones got the sack early on, continues to show up in limited action over and over again. And like you said with Igbenogany, I know I've been higher on him than you have. He's shown a lot of potential, and they've got time to develop him. again, McCain and Rowe, absolutely solid. I know I harp on them a lot, but I think they go unheralded a lot because of the star power at cornerback. Nick Needham continues to step up and really starting to settle into that slot corner role. And yeah, X had at least one other opportunity that should have been a pick, and probably one other that could have been in this one. It's a shame that he decided to do his best Chris Clemens impression on those, but we'll give him a break considering he's got 7 interceptions um, for the second time in his career.
Yep.
But I'm going to go with the A here. I think the secondary continues to be a bright spot for this team, and I like their symbiotic relationship with the front.
Yeah, and special teams. I'm going to throw it back to you on that, Paul.
I thought Jakeem Grant looked the smartest I've ever seen him as a punt returner today. He made a lot of good choices on those punts going in the end zone and actually kept one going in the end zone by throwing a block to keep the gunner away from the ball in a critical moment. And I think Sanders continues to have his Pro Bowl form. Matt Hawk, this was probably the worst day we've seen from Hawk this season, and it's easy. I think he averaged like 35 yards a punt, and it wasn't because he was putting them inside the 10. He didn't full-blown shank a punt today, but he had a lot of short punts in this one that against a more competent opponent could have really cost this team as well. The only thing that probably would have cost this team more were a couple of cough-ups from the running backs. But again, overall, I can go with a B here, despite Hawk having a poor day.
Yeah, Hawk, it didn't look great today, and he had one punt. I think the Dolphins punted it from their own about 30, 35-yard line, and it landed at the Jets 42. And I'll say with Matt Hawk, given how well he's punted this year, I'm going to let that one go. But overall, for grading the actual game, yeah, that factors into it. But Jason Sanders, I mean, I think we're just accepting at this point that this guy is going to nail 50-yard field goals in any condition, under any situation. I mean, we can't underestimate here that he nailed a 51 and a 54-yard field goal. I mean, it was 3-0 Jets. If the Dolphins miss that 54-yard field goal, the Jets have the ball up 3-0, and they've got the ball almost at midfield.
Well, and Kat, I got to ask you this. Sorry, I don't mean to cut in. I know you're giving your breakdown of special teams. That 54-yard field goal, is it just me, or did it look like it would have been good from about 70 yards?
Every kick that Jason Sanders makes looks good from 65 to 70 yards. I mean, it is an incredible thing. And another thing, too, and I'll tell you this, and I'll promise you this, that Jason Sanders should be the obvious consensus Pro Bowl, All-Pro, everything. He won't be. Jason Tucker will be, because Jason Tucker had a slightly less better season than Jason Sanders here. Promise you that. But overall, when it comes to the special teams unit, I'm going to go with a B+ for the Dolphins unit here. I thought, yeah, actually, I'm going to go with an A-. Jason Sanders did a phenomenal job. Matt Hawk shanked one punt as far as I'm concerned, and Jakeem Grant didn't break one, but he did a good job as a punt returning, defending the back end. Paul, who is your player of the game? Who is your Coke Bus player of the game?
Coke Bus player, I'm going to go with Austin Jackson. I know he had some good plays, but it is inexcusable for me. I don't care how old you are if you're in the NFL. I don't care if you're a rookie. I don't care if you're a third string guy. There should never be a play where somebody runs on the inside of you as a left tackle, especially. Somebody runs on the inside of you and there is no one in front of you and there is no one outside of you. So you can't make some excuse like, oh, I didn't see him coming because I was hitting this guy. You had no one and a guy running right here, literally almost chipping you on the way by, and you don't even look at him. You don't even take a swipe at him. You don't God, leg whip him. Something, even if it's illegal. Like, grab him. Anything. Or at least look like you missed a guy. Unless you're blind in one eye. You can't. You didn't even acknowledge that the guy existed. It's not a ghost going by you. Like, I don't get it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm gonna throw Austin Jackson on the Coke bus this week. As far as player of the game, I'm gonna take the easy route here. I'm gonna go Xavier Howard. Congrats on the 7 interceptions. Can't wait to see how many he ends up with this year, especially with teams targeting him. And really,
Yeah.
given the favorable matchups and quarterbacks that we're going to be going up against down the stretch here outside of Patrick Mahomes, there's a lot of turnover prone guys that are coming up on as we hit this final month of the season.
Yeah. As far as my player of the game, I was deciding between a few guys. One was Xavier Howard. One was Devonta Parker, who had 8 catches for 119 yards officially, despite what Paul wants you to think. And finally, my player of the game is going to be actually Jason Sanders at the kicker position, because I thought he had 2 of the most important plays of the game. I mean, when he made the kick to put the Dolphins even at 3-3, and then he had a 51 yard field goal to put the Dolphins up 13-3 before the half. Those were major plays in the game. It was 13-3 halfway through the fourth quarter. These were major plays in the game here. My Coke Bus player of the game, it's tough to go with one guy here, and partially because I forgot some notes here. But I'm going to go with Matt Breida. Matt Breida should have been the guy to finish this game strong. This was Matt Breida's game. Myles Gaskin wasn't playing. And it was his time to overleap the rest of the crowd, and he let Deandre Washington overleap him instead. So he was taken off the field, and that's not acceptable for a Dolphins team that traded a 5th round pick for him for 1 year, and he's going to be a free agent after the year. So he's not living up to his potential right now. Paul, has anything else jumped out from you here from the chat?
So not necessarily on the chat, but one thought that I had, and this is based on some of the COVID spinning around the NFL right now. If this had happened with the Dolphins, I want to get your take, because I'd be absolutely ripped about it at this point. If Fitz and Tua and Reed Sinnett and anybody else that can play quarterback had not only seen other players get nailed for the close contact thing, but had been sitting in a meeting room together with their masks off repeatedly, at this point in the year, at this point in the season, at this point in 2020, how pissed off would you be if one of them came down with COVID and they all had to sit out like the Broncos did today, to the point where you're looking at a guy that played a couple games of quarterback as a freshman in college, or an assistant coach to come in and be your quarterback for at least a week?
Yeah, I think it's incredible that somebody came down with COVID and 3 other people in that room did not wear a mask. And it doesn't surprise me either that Drew Lock, Blake Bortles, and Jeff Driscoll, and who's the other guy? I can't remember, did something stupid. Even though the Broncos are the only team that has beat the Dolphins over the last 2 months. But yeah, no, I dude, just follow the rule. I mean, just follow the rules. The stakes are high. I'm tired of hearing about COVID suspensions and all this crap from week to week. Just wear your freaking mask from week to week. I mean, for crying out loud.
And not just that, but I got to put some of it on the coaching staff because you know this is the thing. And I know you refer to it as the quarterback room, but separate them at the most important position on your team. Push them apart during the week of practice. So, God forbid, one of these jacks comes up with a positive test. You're not yanking everybody from that position group.
Yeah, what you should do is keep Blake Bortles in that situation on the practice squad and keep him confined in a room. He's made $60 million for doing nothing his entire career. So put him in a room and just say, study the playbook and don't get COVID. That's it. That's all you got to do. It's not hard to do. I mean, Jesus Christ. I mean, crying out loud. That's going to do it for our breakdown of the Dolphins Jets game here. The Dolphins win 20-3. Wait, hold on. No, the Dolphins win 20-3 over the New York Jets, go to 7-4 on the year, and are the 6th seed in the AFC at this point. They play the Bengals next week with Brandon Allen at quarterback. They're expected to win that game too and be a heavy favorite. Knock on wood. You better win that game. Don't lose it. Otherwise, nothing else will matter as far as the Dolphins playoffs hopes. Not really, but kind of. You can follow Paul and I on Facebook, Twitter, Spreaker, iTunes, YouTube, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. I'm Brian Cat NFL. Paul is fanatic_pick on Twitter. And if it's not on the right side and it's not on the left side, it is on the fin side.